OG Rose here, and today we're going to be talking about a paper called The Uselessness of Thought, Unreality Prediction, Risk Assessment, and Motivation. And the gist of the paper is really sort of exploring different ways that thought is limited. We all know that economic modeling didn't really warn us about the 2008 financial crisis. The pollsters got Brexit and Trump wrong. So, there's a lot of questions of what exactly are we doing when we think? And the argument is that, and it's an argument made throughout a lot of different papers, is that thought itself entails some certain limits that if we understand are the limits of thought, then it actually becomes rational to accept those limits. But if we don't accept that limits, then it's rational to think of thought as unlimited, which can give us some trouble. And this is not arguing that thinking is bad, but it's going to argue that if we want thinking to work, then we have to also understand ways that it's limited. So for example, thinking is time-bound. If in 5 minutes a room is on fire that I am in, well, 5 minutes before that it's not rational to run out of the room, but 5 minutes later it is. So rationality is very fluid. But also, sometimes different variables or information can change and we not know about it, and we can still be operating according to something that was rational 5 minutes ago that's not rational 5 minutes later. Also, thinking is really, really tied up with risk assessment and predictions and things like that. Often we just kind of think about, think and come to the solution. But often life doesn't consist so much of problems and solutions as it does trade-offs, and so we have to make risk assessments. And also, too, even if we make a good decision, let's say there's a 90% chance that the room I'm in catches on fire and I run out of it, and maybe running out of the room costs me a job interview or something, and then the room doesn't catch on fire, does that mean I was stupid? Well, no, there was a 90% chance it was going to catch on fire, so it was irrational to stay, even if the result makes me look like I was stupid. So the relationship between probability and rationality really needs to be explored, because rationality does not operate in a vacuum. It's always in a fluid world, and also pretty much always dealing with incomplete information. So it's very probabilistic, not necessarily absolute. So it's limited in that way. So you always have to make predictions when you're being rational. You always have to work on incomplete information. The other issue is that when I think about something, I'm always in a way shrinking the world around me. If I'm thinking about a bookcase in a room, then I'm kind of approaching the world as if the bookcase is the only thing that exists in that room because of focus. But if I didn't have focus, if I didn't have the ability to shrink the world, then my mind would explode. So, you need to have that ability. But in so doing, it's easy to forget that you're actually operating according to what I guess in a sense could be called a simulation of reality, not reality itself, and to, in a sense, be treating the room as if it is just the bookcase. And I think that can happen in theory a lot. If you're really an economist who's big on inflation, then you can start to treat inflation as a sort of theory of everything. To see anywhere you look in economics, there's that old saying, if you have a hammer, then there's a nail everywhere. Similarly, if you're scared of the liberal agenda, if you're scared of fascism, if you're scared of all these things, and you're focusing on the world in those terms and shrinking it, you might see it everywhere, and actually, according to your simulation, quote unquote, it might in fact be a problem, but your simulation is incomplete. And do note, very important, just because thinking shrinks the world, that does not mean the simulation is wrong. It's a big mistake to conflate the incompleteness of thinking with the necessity of thinking being wrong. A simulation is incomplete, but it can be right. Just because we're stuck in finitude or finitude, as a lot of mystics and all talk about, it does not follow that our finitude has no relationship with the infinite. It does not follow that our simulations of the world have no relation with the actual world. We just always have to be aware that it's incomplete, that we're dealing with something that's very incomplete. Also, too, there's the problem of thinking not being particularly good at being its own grounding, even though thinking presents itself as capable of picking its own axioms. If I'm a Christian, for example, or if I'm a Muslim or whatever, an atheist, then it can feel like I've arrived at those first premises, belief in God, belief in Jesus, etc., through rationality. But rationality always comes after I've selected a truth. If I think it's going to rain today, to use this example again, then it becomes rational to bring an umbrella. but let's say it doesn't rain. Does that mean I was irrational? No, I was wrong, but I wasn't irrational. And it's the idea of what I believe is true that actually organizes, sorts, and makes possible my rationality. Now, that isn't to say that rationality can't be skeptical of its own foundations, but ultimately, for first premises, there's going to have to be some sort of faith assent, some sort of Kierkegaardian leap of faith, and no one can get out of that, and that doesn't mean that the premises are wrong, but it does mean that it can't be rationality all the way down. The old saying, it's turtles all the way down. It can't be rationality all the way down, so it's limited in that way. Rationality is also quite radically influenced by emotion, as discussed in the heart-mind dialectic. So there are certain ways where thinking is going to prove useless, quote unquote, to be provocative when it comes to selecting axioms, when it comes to understanding the whole world. You're going to have to transfer into different ways of knowing, like experience, emotion, or different things like that. And I do think when you combine all those things together, although whatever sense of the world we have will ultimately be incomplete, not all completes are equally incomplete. It would be erroneous to say that just because everyone's view of the world has to be incomplete, all of them are equal. That doesn't necessarily follow. Some might be more right than others, although, of course, you'd have to be God to know which are which. But I do think through Humean tests, Karl Popper's tests, through experience, although certainty can't be possible, we can certainly get a sense of confidence. Then we certainly can achieve reason to believe which incomplete views of the world are better than not. So anyway, that's just a quick overview of some of the ideas in the uselessness of thought. For more by O.G. Rose, please visit www.ogrose.com, and thank you for your time.